So here we are doing this 1 point perspective. We have this line already that is our um, what we call the line of horizon. This line, we are working free-handed, so you don't have to use a ruler as best as you can. You use a freehand sort of approach to drawing. So if you do more than one line, that is fine. Um, this line is called the line of horizon, or the horizontal line. It separates the sky like from the ground. Um, then the next thing we are going to do is identify where we want our vanishing point. The vanishing point is where everything seems to disappear out of the view of your eyes. So we just make a little mark here, keep your lines lightly, and then we are going to put in now where we want our road to be. It will move like this towards our vanishing point, keeping our lines lightly for now, and then from here again we will have another area there where we draw the um, the road. So this road, notice that it is wide as you go into the distance. Okay, so there we go again with this section of it. So this is the road. The next thing we are going to identify is where we want the top of the trees. The top of the trees are going to be located round about here. This is where we decide that we want them. It could be a little bit higher, that is fine, but not the top of it must not go, the line that we're going to draw must not go above this line that is our line of horizon. So here we go right here with this line. This is where we want the top of our trees to be, and here we go on the other side with this line similar. Now in previous lessons we actually put these lines above the horizontal line, but you would have to have watched or been in those class. Now what we are going to do is that we are going to try to do some trees. These trees, we call them the Italian cypress. They are easy to draw, looking like some carrots turned upside down. We are going to do them lightly. We can put in some lines here just to make sure that they are straight. So we just make just a shape of these Italian cypress trees. As they move towards the line, the distance, as they go towards the vanishing point, they get smaller, because one thing we note is that everything gets smaller as it moves towards or go into the distance. It gets smaller. So these trees will get smaller as they move into the distance. So now I'm just trying to capture the shape. As well as what will happen is that the space between them will get closer as they go in the distance. So you want to give the space in between them a little bit, making them a little bit closer as they go into the distance. So not only do they get smaller, the space between them gets a little bit closer. We go on the other side and we are going to repeat the same. It doesn't matter that they are not lining up. You just want to make sure that they are this line. I just want to make sure that I put this line straight like the edge of the page to make sure that it is lining up. One here. This line helps to make sure that it is not falling over, but it is straight up or erect. get smaller as well as closer, just on the same side, so that you understand what is happening here. And then this last one. Alright, now, so you get the impression that you are above looking down. Then we are going to put in the mountains. Our mountains should be sloping and not pointed, but more sloping gently up and down, and not something that you just rise up in the air and it looks like spike. If you fall out of the sky and fall on one of them, it will impale you. Alright, so that is the mountain, and that will be fine. Yours might not look the same, but the general idea is that this is how we would want them. And they shouldn't look uneven, not the same. So you don't want to create a pattern doing like the same thing. Each mountain range should look a bit different. Now what we are going to be doing now is that we are going to remove the line here from the top of the tree. Very important, because we don't need it. We just wanted to use this line just to say where the top of the trees should be. So now we don't need these lines, so we erase just these lines alone. And remember to keep your lines light. Okay, now the next thing that I'm going to do is that I'm going to start to put in some shading or some toning in this here image. The shading or the toning will give you the impression. I'm just going to shift my camera more to the side. The shading or the toning will give the impression of distance. So what I want to achieve here now, using this one was a 3B that I use. I'm going to be using like a darker shade of pencil in some instance, a 6B. Looks somewhat like this. This is one type of drawing pencil, and if you notice, the 6B is on it, and here is another one, the 3B. Turn it the right ways up. So when I want to get darker, I use the higher number, so I use the 6B when I want to get darker, and I use the 3B when I want it to get a little bit lighter. Now if it's only one pencil you have, then you have to use just the one. So if it's just one you have, you can't switch, so you use just the one. So here I'm starting out using this one, 6B, and I'm shading horizontally, right across. So I'm going to shade from here dark, and as I move towards the hills or into the distance, I'm going to get lighter. I'm shading first right across everything. So I want you to watch me carefully. I'm shading across everything horizontally. Very important that you keep your shading this way, because some persons tend to turn the shading another way and then it looks kind of funny. Alright, so keep your shading this way. As you go in the distance, you are going to get lighter and lighter. We're going across the trees as well as the shade, because I will show you how you are going to make adjustment for that. So the road and the ground, we are going to call here the road and the ground here, where we have grass or dirt, whatever. It gets, both areas get lighter, so everything do get lighter moving into the distance. It gets lighter. Alright, so everything gets lighter moving into the distance. So we come back over this. So this is a process that it's not one time, so you'll have to come back over it again, and you try to get you think smooth and nice. Just be a little bit patient with this one, and you are moving into the distance, getting lighter as you go along. If you are using the drawing pencil, you have to be careful because it can get suddenly dark depending on which one you are using. Like I'm using the 6B now, and what sometimes happens is that it can just get suddenly dark and out of control. So you have to be careful of how much pressure you apply on with the pencil depending on how dark it is. Alright, so here we go with that. So we want it dark. Come back down here again. So notice that this is not a one shot or a one time that you will do this, but you'll have to do it several times to get the ground going from a dark to a light. Keeping the thing horizontal. Never mind the trees, you go through them just the same because you'll be seeing them, and I'll show you how you go about a little bit further down getting the shading into the trees. So come back down here. I want it to show, and it must fade gradually into the distance, and that's what we're trying to achieve, showing that nearest to you, anything that is near to you will appear darker, even the ground or the road, and as it goes away in the distance it gets lighter, because of course logically anything that is far away from you will appear to be paler because it is of course not near. Alright, so now here's where I want to make sure that the ground is shaded and it's getting lighter as you move in the distance. So I just come over here just to make sure that I have this feeling. And over here, shading horizontally, very important. If you change the shading, it will sometimes change the feeling of the work, and it will look like sometimes if we should shade it like slant, it will look like the ground is sloping. So that's why we want the ground to appear to be flat, so we keep the shading in a flat way. Alright, I'm going to come back to the road, the ground, but what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to make the ground a little bit darker. I want it to be different, the ground to be different, a little bit different from the grass, so to speak, or the ground. I want the road to show it, so I'm making the road a little bit darker than the area where we have the what we call the grass. So deliberately so, I want the road to appear or to jump out a little bit more than the grass. So I am doing that just now where I want that. So I am going to be shading it just to make sure that it sticks out a little bit more. So I'm shading it a little bit darker so that I have a what is called another word in art, so that I have a contrast between the road and the area that I'm calling the grass, or the area that is not the road, on either side of the road. So I want to just shade it, but the same thing must happen where it gets lighter as it moves towards the distance. So in each case, so you don't try and do it one time, because you might mess up. So you go over and gradually get darker, the lighter going. You can switch pencils if you want, like I'm using the 6B now, and if it was getting out of control where it's getting too dark going downward, I would switch to a lighter pencil. Alright, I'm going to come back on it a bit, but I'm going to leave that here now, and I'm going to go to the trees. Now the trees, each one of them get darker, lighter as they go in the distance. So I'm going to start with this, and I'm going to be shading it this way. I want my light to be coming from the right hand side of the page and shining this way. So over on the left hand side will be darker, and over on the right hand side of the tree will be a little bit lighter. So I'm going to shade it this way first, in a diagonal fashion, catching the shape of the tree, because we are not going to put any line around the tree. Remember, there are no lines around anything in reality per se. So I'm starting now to get the tree to be a little bit darker at first. So the ones that are closest to you will be much darker than the ones that are further away. Notice how I shade diagonally with it. It also gives the feeling that there are some like leaves that are there. Now this area closest to you is called the foreground, and the background is where the mountains are in the sky. Then you have middle ground, which will be somewhere about here in the middle. Alright, so those are some terms that is important that you know. Foreground is near to you, middle ground is more in the middle, and background is where you find like mountains and skies, and anything that is far away from you. So those are some terms to remember. Alright, now notice I'm not trying to shade this too flat, and I am remembering as well that my light is coming from over the right and shining over on that side, making this a little bit darker as well as we move towards the in the distance. It gets lighter. Going to this one. Switching my pencil. Remembering at all times that each one gets a little bit lighter, and you can go over them to change to make sure of that. So as I'm moving in the distance here, I will come back to make sure of that. So as I shade, I'm going to come back to make sure that each one is lighter as then it moves into the distance. How do I do that? Come back each time and make the first one a little bit darker, and then adjust the others. edges of this a little bit rough too. I don't want it smooth because I want to get the feeling that there are leaves there. Making sure that on the right hand side, over on this side, it's a little bit darker as well because my light is coming from that side. If you look closely, you will notice too that I'm putting some, not making it smooth, so it gives the feeling that there are leaves that are there. And just, if you notice, it's feeling, it gives the feeling, not that there are actual leaves, but you can create like a little pattern, and a pattern is actually a principle of art. And the texture that I'm using, texture again is an element of art, giving the feeling that the light is coming from over on that side. So we darken the right side a little bit, come down to this one, and we want to give the same impression. And then we are going to go over on that side, and we want to create the same sort of feeling. Coming to come. Sharp my pencil a little bit. And notice now that we can start to put in a little bit more detail. So the tree that is here over on this side, make sure that over on this side it is lighter on the right side, and on the left side it's a little bit darker, showing that the light is coming from over the left, the right side rather. Yes, and we are putting in some variation inside here. If you notice, if you just watch and see what I'm doing in some area, I just increase the darkness, and it creates like a pattern and give you the feeling that it's actually like leaves or shrubbery, or you're getting this kind of texture, give you the feeling that the unevenness of the shading that I'm doing, give you the feeling that you are actually there are some leaves or something that is there. Of course, it's just a feeling, so it's more like what is called creating an illusion. Not real, but this is how you have to do it in order to get the feeling that some leaves are there. Rather than trying to draw leaves, you don't draw the leaves because you can't do that. Virtually impossible. So you just create a feeling by doing this kind of texturization of the thing, so it create um, like, yeah. So go down to this one now, put in a little bit of the same, only that it's lighter. Remember guys, it must appear that it's getting lighter as it moves towards the distance. It is getting lighter, so you don't try to darken the entire thing, but you get lighter as you move towards the distance. um, Remembering the little texture, so as they get smaller and going the distance too, there's much texture you can put, because when things are far away from you, you see less detail, so you can try like these down here to put in a lot of texture like these up here. You can go down here because it's far, so you are seeing less of anything. So you don't have to try to put in a lot of detail. Only like the shadow, make sure that the right side, the left side is a little bit darker, and that is the most that will be required. Alright, so we're getting there, not looking too badly. Alright, now one of the things that we want to do as well is that we're going to come back now on the each time I just try to make sure that these are darker as it go along. There we want to now go for the road again. I'm going to come back to the road, and I want my road to be a little bit darker so I can define it. Notice that the edge of the road is not smooth or even. I don't want it smooth because it's like a country road. So what I want is just to have a division or a contrast between where the grass is here and where the road is. So notice that I'm not even trying to straight the road too smoothly, because I want it to look like, you know, the kind of road that you're walking down the road and it's uneven. You are probably in the bushes or not in town, but you are off in this country area, so the road don't have to be flat and even when you shade it. What you just want to make sure of is that it gets lighter as it moves into the distance, so that creates a feeling of perspective as well, you getting lighter as it moves into the distance. We are just about coming down, so the movement of these unevenness in the road, just keep the shading horizontal. We are getting lighter. Notice now you're not seeing the pencil line again, and I haven't really rubbed out anything. So the pencil lines should have been lightly done, so by the time you are finished with this, you're not really seeing much of it or any at all, because you don't need a line to define. There's no line really to define the road. We just use that at first to kind of help with some guidance. Alright, so there's no line that is on any side of the road to show you anything. So all these lines that we did were lines to help us in our construction of this scene or composition. Oh, by the way, the next thing is this. This is called a composition. Every piece of work that is done on this thing is called a composition. It's and the composition is just whatever is there on the paper, right? So if I say draw a composition, this would be a composition. It's a body of work, right? In English, you would write a composition. In art, you would draw or paint or design. Alright, so this is called a composition as well. Darken here just a little bit more, just to make sure that we get the dark going from near to far. You get the feeling, that feeling that we are looking for, that as we go in the distance we get lighter. So we want to directly see that kind of movement, and I think I'm getting it there. So we are almost there with that one. Yours might look better than mine afterward, but that's fine. That's the idea. That yours, once you get the, so as we move into the distance, we must get a little bit lighter as we go along. The road, the side of the grass as well, the same thing applies, but we don't want it to be as dark as the road, right? But the same thing applies here. I'm just going to make sure that we get some amount of it here. We are coming down to the greater part of this. Let me see, we have, okay, so our time basically for this one is up. So I'm going to stop, pause. Alright, so for this now, we are we are going to continue with the ground here, where the ground goes from a dark to a light, as well as the road, so we must get the same feeling. And just to get the ground going from a dark to a light, so nearest to you, you are going to make sure that it is darker slightly, not as dark as the road. And as it moves in the distance, of course, you must see where it gets lighter. Keep your shading horizontal, of course, keeping the shading horizontal. And as you get close to where the mountains are going to be, it gets really lighter. Now, the trees, I'm going to now put in some shadows in our trees where the light is coming from the left, the right rather, of our composition. The light is coming from the left. Therefore, the shadow of the objects are going to be falling towards the left. So if the light is coming from the right over the side, the shadows will fall over on the left. So light coming from right, shadow falls on the left. So we are going to put in a bit of shadow here now. Keep the shadows also in one direction. So don't keep changing your shadows. So we are coming with some shadows here now, a little bit darker, close towards the base of the tree. And the length of the shadow depends on how high in the air the sun is. Closer towards the base of the tree or the object is darker. So closest towards the base is darker. As it comes out, it fades out a little bit, so it gets lighter. So darker, fade out to light. We come over on this one, the same thing applies, darker. But remember also that as you move into the distance, that your shadow also gets lighter. So this shadow is darker than this one. So each shadow should get progressively lighter as it moves into the distance as well, right? So everything moving in distance affects the magnitude of a color or a shade. Distance affects everything. So you can't have this. Alright, so everything is affected by distance. So the shadows on the tree gets lighter as they go into distance, and everything has a shadow. Every single thing has a shadow. Keep your shadow in one direction. So if the light hits the shadow and it falls this way, anywhere you make it fall, make the other shadows fall the same direction. So here we go with this one.